There is a crystalline salt that costs exactly $2. You can buy it in the baking aisle of any grocery store. It fundamentally alters the chemical DNA of any car battery. It makes your battery physically impossible to kill. You can leave your headlights on for 14 straight days. You can drain the electrical charge to absolute 0 volts. You will never need to buy dangerous jumper cables again. You will never wait hours for an expensive tow truck. You just attach a cheap solar charger and it resurrects. Auto parts stores charge $200 for fragile acid batteries. They tell you a deeply drained battery is dead forever. They are relying on your absolute fear of chemistry. This $2 pickling salt replaces the toxic acid entirely. It converts a fragile battery into an immortal crystal cell. The battery completely stops degrading at the molecular level. It becomes entirely immune to deep voltage discharging. It is entirely legal to build in your own garage. It takes roughly 3 hours to complete the conversion. It costs less than a cheap cup of black coffee. The true enemy is hiding right under your vehicle hood. The enemy is not just the plastic battery casing. The enemy is the liquid sulfuric acid inside the box. The automotive industry standardized sulfuric acid for one specific reason. It is highly volatile and intentionally self-destructive over time. The massive roadside assistance industry generates $8 billion annually. They strictly rely on your battery dropping below 12 volts. They pray you forget to turn off your dome light. They pray the winter cold saps your cranking amps. When a standard acid battery drops below 10.5 volts, the internal lead plates suffer permanent and catastrophic chemical damage. The acid literally eats the lead plates alive from inside. This is a mathematically perfect and ruthless corporate trap. The battery manufacturers sell you the fragile acid bomb. The towing companies charge you $150 when the bomb explodes. The mechanics charge you $200 for a brand new bomb. They engineered a closed loop of constant financial extraction. They built an entire empire on intentional chemical fragility. If you eliminate the sulfuric acid from the equation, you completely destroy their recurring revenue business model. They absolutely despise the concept of an invincible battery. You become a massive liability to their quarterly profit margins. Let me take you back to Paris in 1859. A French physicist named Gaston Plante invented the lead acid battery. He needed a reliable way to store electrical energy. He submerged 2 raw lead sheets in pure sulfuric acid. The invention successfully powered early telegraph systems across Europe, but early engineers quickly discovered a fatal mechanical flaw. The sulfuric acid violently destroyed the lead plates over time. By 1890, electrical pioneers began searching for a stable alternative. They experimented with heavily concentrated crystalline salt solutions. They discovered that aluminum sulfate created a vastly superior battery. Aluminum sulfate is a naturally occurring earth mineral. It is completely non-toxic and incredibly cheap to mine. Early off, grid farmers used it to purify their drinking water. They used it to preserve and pickle their vegetable harvests. When engineers placed this salt inside the early battery casings, the battery stopped decaying and degrading almost entirely. The aluminum salt formed a protective crystalline matrix inside. The battery could power a telegraph machine until totally empty. It could sit completely empty for 6 straight months. When they applied fresh power, the battery woke up instantly. It suffered absolutely 0 structural damage from being empty. The military observed these incredible crystal battery experiments closely, but the booming automotive industry made a highly calculated decision. They chose the destructive sulfuric acid over the immortal salt. Why did the automotive industry choose the destructive liquid acid? Because sulfuric acid delivers a slightly higher initial voltage burst. It provides exactly 12.6 volts compared to the crystal 11.5 volts. The car manufacturers used this tiny voltage difference as an excuse. They claimed engines strictly required the higher acid voltage. That was an absolute and verifiable engineering lie. Early vehicle starters cranked perfectly fine on 11.5 volts. The real reason they standardized the toxic sulfuric acid was profit. A crystal salt battery simply refuses to die on schedule. It would outlast the actual steel frame of the vehicle. You cannot sell replacement parts that outlive the original machine. The industry aggressively buried the aluminum sulfate research by 1920. They wrote sulfuric acid into every single official engineering manual. They effectively erased the invincible crystal battery from human history. They condemned billions of drivers to an endless cycle of failure. Before I reveal exactly how to build this immortal battery, listen to me very closely right now. This erased battery chemistry is just the very beginning. The automotive industry is hiding hundreds of permanent mechanical fixes. The utility companies are actively hiding off grid solar loopholes. The pharmaceutical industry is burying natural chemical compounds entirely. This channel is dedicated to ripping the lid off every vault. We are exposing the $5 solar panel survival techniques. Next, we are releasing the absolute 72-hour blackout grid protocols. Hit the subscribe button right now to secure your survival. Turn on the notification bell to weaponize your household. Do not let them keep you entirely dependent and terrified. But do not click away from this video just yet. We are about to dismantle the $8 billion towing cartel completely. What actually happens when you leave your headlights on? You walk away from your parked car in the evening. Your vehicle continues to draw a steady electrical current. Inside a standard battery, the sulfuric acid begins a violent reaction. The acid chemically attacks the heavy internal lead plates. It physically converts the solid lead into soft lead sulfate. The liquid acid becomes nothing but diluted colored water. The battery voltage drops slowly from 12.6 to exactly 10.5 volts. 10.5 volts is the absolute death zone for lead acid technology. Once the voltage crosses below that specific mathematical threshold, the soft lead sulfate begins to harden into impenetrable crystals. These hardened crystals act like an absolute electrical fortress. They permanently block any new electricity from entering the plates. You return to your vehicle the next morning and turn the key. You hear nothing but a rapid mechanical clicking sound. You immediately attach heavy jumper cables from another running vehicle. You force 14 volts violently into the dead battery casing. Your engine finally cranks and you drive to work. But the permanent chemical damage is already completely done. You lost exactly 30% of your battery capacity in one night. The internal lead plates are heavily scarred and physically warped. The next time the temperature drops below exactly 32 degrees, that damaged acid battery will fail you completely and permanently. You are now officially trapped in the roadside assistance economy. You are waiting 3 hours for a heavy tow truck. You are paying a massive premium for an emergency replacement. You are a victim of an incredibly fragile and toxic chemistry. How does a simple pickling salt rewrite this brutal chemistry? Aluminum sulfate is not an acid in any way whatsoever. It is a highly stable and structural inorganic salt. When you mix this pure white powder with distilled water, you create a powerful and stable alkaline electrolyte solution. When you pour this liquid into an empty battery casing, it fundamentally changes how the electrical energy is actually stored. It does not violently attack or eat the lead plates. Instead, it forms a microscopic crystalline matrix around the metal. This protective matrix acts as a highly advanced energy sponge. It holds the electrical current without relying on physical destruction. When you leave your headlights on with an Alum battery, the voltage drops steadily down past the 10.5 volt death zone. It continues to drop to 5 volts, then 2 volts. It eventually hits absolute 0.00 volts on a digital multimeter. The battery is completely and utterly drained of all electricity. In a standard acid battery, this means absolute permanent death. But inside the Alum crystal battery, absolutely nothing is damaged. The lead plates remain perfectly intact under the crystal matrix. There is absolutely zero hardened sulfation blocking the electrical paths. You do not need massive jumper cables to force it awake. You do not need a secondary vehicle to rescue you. You simply attach a tiny 2-amp trickle charger to the terminals. You can even use a cheap $15 dashboard solar panel. The aluminum crystal matrix immediately begins absorbing the incoming energy. The voltage climbs steadily back from 0 to full capacity. The battery bounces back to life with 100% original strength. It does not lose 30% of its capacity. It does not warp. It does not crack. It does not leak. You can repeat this absolute 0-volt draining process thousands of times. Off-grid solar experts have run Alum batteries for 15 years. They drain them entirely empty every single night without fear. They recharge them fully with the morning sun without fail. This is absolute immunity to the most common automotive failure. The chemistry is verified, stable, and completely undisputed by science. Why is this secret completely erased from automotive manuals? Let us look precisely at the brutal math behind the curtain. A standard lead acid battery costs $200 and lasts 48 months. This aluminum sulfate conversion costs $2 and lasts forever. A roadside jumpstart service costs $150 and lasts 10 minutes. This chemical battery immunity costs $2 and lasts forever. The entire automotive aftermarket relies on your battery dying. They sell exactly 100 million replacement batteries in America annually. That is $20 billion in retail sales every single year. Towing companies dispatch 30 million trucks annually for dead batteries. That is another massive, multi-billion-dollar secondary industry entirely. You absolutely cannot build a corporate empire on a permanent solution. You cannot sell a $200 replacement if the original never breaks. You cannot charge a $150 towing fee if the driver self-recovers. If every driver converted their battery to an Alum crystal cell, the entire emergency roadside industry would collapse overnight. Auto parts stores would lose their most profitable recurring product. They aggressively protect the toxic sulfuric acid standard for survival. They need your vehicle to be extremely vulnerable to human error. They need a simple forgotten headlight to cost you hundreds. You are a highly predictable financial asset to their boardroom. When you remove the fragile acid, you remove their absolute power. How do you build this immortal crystal battery today? Here is the exact and unforgiving protocol to convert your battery. You must wear heavy rubber safety gloves and protective goggles. Sulfuric acid is incredibly dangerous and will burn human skin. Remove your dying lead acid battery from your vehicle completely. Place it on a stable concrete surface in a well-ventilated area. Pry off the plastic caps covering the 6 internal battery cells. Carefully tip the heavy battery over a large plastic bucket. Drain every single drop of the toxic sulfuric acid out. You must take this extracted acid to a proper recycling center. Never pour automotive battery acid into the ground or public drains. Once the battery casing is completely empty of old acid, you must absolutely neutralize the microscopic acid remaining inside. Mix exactly 1 cup of baking soda into 1 gallon of distilled water. Pour this heavy baking soda mixture directly into the empty cells. The battery will immediately begin to violently fizz and bubble. This is the baking soda destroying the remaining toxic acid. Leave the baking soda mixture inside the battery for exactly 10 minutes. Drain the entire casing completely into your plastic waste bucket. Rinse the empty casing out 3 times with pure distilled water. The internal lead plates are now completely bare, clean, and neutralized. Now you will build the immortal aluminum crystal electrolyte. Go to any grocery store and buy powdered alum in the spice aisle. It is often labeled directly as pickling salt or aluminum sulfate. Heat exactly 1 gallon of pure distilled water to 150 degrees. Mix exactly 16 ounces of the alum powder into the hot water. Stir the mixture aggressively until the water becomes entirely clear. Using a clean plastic funnel, pour the warm alum liquid into the battery. Fill each specific cell exactly to the factory plastic fill line. Leave the plastic caps completely off the top of the battery casing. Attach a standard 12-volt trickle charger to the metal terminals. Set the heavy machine to a very slow 2-amp charging rate. You must slowly form the internal crystals over exactly 48 hours. The battery will bubble gently as the crystal matrix physically forms. After exactly 48 hours, disconnect the electrical charger completely. Press the plastic protective caps firmly back into their original places. You now possess a completely immortal crystal battery. Install the heavy unit securely back into your vehicle engine bay. Turn your ignition key. Your engine will fire up with pure, stable, unkillable energy. This converted battery is much more than a clever garage trick. This is a violent rejection of an engineered system of dependency. Every time a massive industry standardizes a fragile chemical component, they deliberately design it to fail at a highly profitable moment. They replace resilient technology with highly profitable and fragile traps. They train mechanics to strictly follow the corporate replacement manuals. They want you completely and utterly dependent on their roadside services. Early pioneers built machines designed to last for multiple generations. The industry aggressively erased that resilient engineering on absolute purpose. They engineered a massive financial dependency that did not need to exist. That vicious cycle of corporate extraction ends right here today. You now possess the exact chemical blueprint to break their monopoly. Share this critical knowledge with every single driver you know. Send this to anyone who has ever been stranded in the cold. Do not let them steal another hard-earned dollar from your family. Take back absolute control of your own personal transportation. But this is only the second step in a much larger war. There is another heavily guarded mechanical secret you need to see. A $3 liquid that permanently restores heavily rusted automotive frames. The massive body shop industry prayed you never discovered this chemistry. Click the video on your screen right now to uncover it. Starve the massive corporate system that violently bleeds you dry. The next vault is officially open.